Namaskar, and thank you for joining us here on our weekly program on geoeconomics. Today, we'll turn our attention to a recent comment made by the Nobel Prize-winning economist Michael Spence on India's digital economy. Spence said at a panel discussion in India, and I quote him, "As somebody who has spent the last 25 years thinking about growth in one form or another in virtually every corner of the world, let me just say that the major economy with the highest potential growth rate is India." And he also said that India's leap on technology, on the technology front, is going to be a key catalyst for the economic expansion of the country. He further said that India has the world's leading digital economy and financial architecture. Spence had won the Nobel Prize for Economics in 2001 along with George Akerlof and also with Joseph Stiglitz. They laid the foundation for the theory of markets with asymmetric information. So to put this into context, we have our guests on the program tonight, Prasenjit Basu, Chief Economist with ICICI Securities, and Anil Padmanabhan is a senior business journalist with more than 3 decades of experience. Thank you, both of you, for being with us. Mr. Basu, now, both in terms of value and in terms of volume, digital payments in India have left a huge imprint on the economy. So there are about 15 billion transactions, 1,500 crore transactions every month. Has this, had a major impact on speeding up the GDP growth?
Well, it hasn't yet been entirely visible, but the impact, the so-called externalities that come from the use of technologies such as this, innovation such as this, unfold over time. You don't see the impact immediately, but you will see you'll see the effect unfolding over the next few quarters, years, and decades. The fact that India is now the global leader in digital payments means that there is a huge opportunity for entrepreneurship to flower across the country. It also means that efficiency gains are occurring across the economy, and costs are consequently coming down. It'll be manifested in competitiveness of not only our services exports, but also our goods exports over time. And we'll begin to see multiple benefits come through over time. And I think already, of course, India is the world's fastest growing economy. But in my view, we are going to be accelerating. The economy in the current fiscal year is likely to grow slightly less than 8%. Next year, it'll grow around 8 to 8.5%. And the growth pace will accelerate partly because not only is technology being deployed much more effectively in India than anywhere else, but in addition, we are achieving this at a time when inflation in India is relatively tame. The current account deficit is likely to be less than 0.5% of GDP in the current fiscal year. And in the next fiscal year, if there is no significant increase in oil prices, which I don't think there will be, given that China's demand is likely to be very subdued, then you're likely to see a current account surplus. So you have a current account surplus, low inflation, faster growth. This is an economy that is going to really wake the world up and going to become an important driver of the entire world's growth.
Sure, certainly. Mr. Padmanabhan, but when we talk about digital transactions, we look at the velocity of circulation. It's definitely increasing, as we can see, because of the ease of payments. This not necessarily points to people, saving less money. It's because they are actually just finding it easier to spend. But can we, reinterpret that and say that they are investing more into the economy?
See, Mark, they are obviously investing more in the economy, because if you're doing more transactions, that relates to more activity in the economy. But I just want to back up a little and just clarify that I would respectfully disagree with Mr. Basu that I do believe the economic impact is already being felt. In terms of how much of the growth rate you can ascribe to the digital economy, is a little difficult to do, and maybe leave it to the academics. But we can look at other metrics. Particularly, you mentioned that number of growing digital transactions. Let's extend that to the entire digital economy, which includes direct benefits transfer, which is a very touchy-feely thing that we see before us. Some 34 lakh crores have been transferred using DBT, and the savings to the government exchequer is about 3 lakh crore. So money saved is money earned. And you recall, the first COVID relief package was 1.7 lakh crore. So the double of that has been saved. Overall productivity in the economy, we are definitely seeing visible signs. So to go back to your question, yes, the more the transactions, the more the activity, better it is for the economy. And when you pull all of this together with the physical infrastructure that we have seen being ramped up in the last decade and more, the number of rural roads has more than trebled, the highways have doubled. So you bring all these together, the digital economy plus the physical infrastructure, that is what we're talking about, harvesting the digital dividend.
Okay.
So in terms of growth, we are already seeing it. The other digital dividend, which we are yet to see or beginning to see only initial signs, are jobs growth.
Okay. Mr. Basu, the India digital stack, we clearly don't want it limited to India alone. And other countries are showing interest in it. What is the potential, for it to be adopted on a global scale?
Well, increasingly it is being adopted. The global south has received the equivalent of UPI almost free. India is extending digital payment infrastructure that exists domestically to a lot of countries around the world. Sri Lanka, Singapore, several countries in Africa are all keen to sign up to this remarkable digital payments infrastructure. And as that happens, India will reap the benefits of our UPI system being adopted around the world. That'll make it much more convenient and cheap for Indians to pay for things and buy things from around the world. And therefore will smooth the wheels of international trade for us in both goods and services. And consequently, and the fact that, if you think about the internet was invented by the American military, but it became available free of charge for everybody around the world. Similarly, UPI is going to be India's innovation that becomes a form of international public good that India provides to the world. And the fact that we have created that infrastructure, that digital infrastructure for the world, will be of great benefit to us, and will also generate a lot of goodwill. It is generating a lot of goodwill around the world, especially relative to China, which has extortionate terms for the debt that countries take on when they partner with China. So Sri Lanka, many countries in Africa, every country that has defaulted turns out to have had massive debt owed to China on rather extortionate terms. And when you compare that to India's approach of providing a free public good, an international public good to the world, the goodwill generated will have enormous intangible benefits for India over the medium term.
Indeed. Mr. Padmanabhan, you were talking about the infrastructure as well as, the digital infrastructure, but the increase in internet and smartphone penetration and the rise of e-commerce, this has pretty much changed the way everybody is buying and selling goods and services probably forever. But the question is, how quickly has the unbanked segment started fitting into the system?
Mark, the unbanked has just been banked, which you're aware of, that 51 crore people have received a bank account in the last decade. So it will take, but we are seeing the fact that these savings accounts are being used, maybe not to the desired levels, but we have to see this as the first step. But remember that there's a new survey which ASER, the annual survey on education in rural India, they just disclosed, they did a segment on smartphone usage. It was fascinating. They found that 80 to 90% of the youth in rural India between 14 and 18 years of age have access to a smartphone in the house or to personal use, and they know how to use it. And there's barely a difference between the usage ability between the boys and the girls. So if you look at the fact that what we just discussed, that you have banked all these people and now smartphone availability is going up, broadband connectivity is reaching rural India, it's about 60-70% of India has already been covered. You pull all this together, clearly the basis for growing the entire financial inclusion play is phenomenal. So now the next step is to take it to financial literacy, to ensure that these
Yes.
people coming on stream online don't get scammed.
Indeed. Mr. Basu, so clearly then, Jandan, Aadhaar and mobile is working. But for the skeptics, and of course, Mr. Spence or Professor Spence is not one of them, is there a concern, about security of all these transactions going forward? Is it going to be an issue, because we are depending so much on online transactions?
Well, I think the system is robust. It is a robust system, which is why there hasn't been any significant scam or any related to it. We don't know whether malign actors will be able to hack into the system and cause trouble in the future. But certainly, those dangers exist and need to be guarded against. But from what we have seen so far, the digital infrastructure has been remarkably robust. It has not been easy to hack or spoil it in any significant way, and it works very smoothly. And so, as long as that is the case, and as long as we have a robust infrastructure around it to ensure that things remain under control, there will be no problem. But I mean, you cannot rule out potential dangers at some point in the future, of course.
Yeah, because the volumes are so large and massive. Mr. Padmanabhan, does linking bank and mobile phone numbers to the unique ID, which is the Aadhaar in India, make transactions safer? And to what extent actually is there a concern about identity theft? I'm speaking, from the point of view of skeptics of the system still, because they are the ones who are going to raise questions about India moving fast on the highway.
See, Mark, white collar crime is always going to happen. So no system is digitally 100% foolproof. They are all vulnerable. And we have criminals, terrorists, all kinds of negative elements out there online trying to hack or create trouble of all scale and all sorts. But having said that, India's digital infrastructure so far is secure. You are aware of CERTIN, the organization which manages this defense. If you check their website, almost every minute they're putting out warnings on various browsers, apps, etc., and telling people to be aware. So you are always going to be vulnerable, and increasing incidents of this are being picked up. And but the good news is that the Reserve Bank of India has been flagging this. And please also remember there is now a privacy bill in place. So these kind of violations are now criminal offenses. So there is a deterrent, and all stakeholders are also equally culpable. So systems have to be robust, I mean, if a
Absolutely.
bank is offering a facility, they cannot claim that a hands-off approach if in case of an unfortunate incident. So given all these situations, you can play defense, but you can never be very comfortable assuming that you will not be subjected to attacks. But you see, that is crime. So that is something you can police and you can guard against, but I don't think you can totally prevent it.
Indeed. Mr. Basu, so Professor Spence also says that India has the best financial architecture in the world. So we've been talking really about the best financial architecture system of late. And you know, how vital has the banking sector, this transition to digital banking been? Because at the end of the day, that's where it all begins and ends. You know, I mean, the amount of variations and changes that banking undergoes in this fintech revolution that's taking place.
Well, obviously the two go together, and it's the jam trinity that India has capitalized on. Now, the interesting thing is that financial inclusion is a relatively new thing in India. Over the last 9 years, we've had a remarkable revolution in financial inclusion. More than half the population had no bank accounts. They all do now. So, as Mr. Padmanabhan correctly pointed out, financial literacy is particularly important to ensure that the recipients of financial inclusion, the newly included, are not scammed and don't become vulnerable to those who are unscrupulous. So that needs to occur. Financial literacy is a very important aspect that needs to be dealt with over the next few years as well. But the fact that we now have this remarkable digital infrastructure for finance, coupled with the fact that we have an inclusive banking system that includes almost the entire country, means that there are revolutionary opportunities that will occur to the people of India. So this is a remarkable development, and the benefits of it are going to be huge for all of India over the next few years.
Indeed. Mr. Padmanabhan, Spence also talks about India being open and competitive and having an inclusive service delivery system, the Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas model. So, put this into context in terms of the all-round development from the point of view of policy. Because, the idea of a digital economy is that it would have taken one set of people up ahead fast and left the others far behind. But that doesn't seem to have happened.
See, Mark, the digital economy is no magic wand. It will do, what you feed in is what you get.
Yes.
But the uniqueness of India's digital public infrastructure, the DPI, which, as Mr. Basu mentioned earlier, the G20 adopted it as the global standard. And now it is going to be rolled out across countries. And they've accepted it precisely because India's ability to manage public good at scale using DPI has been outstanding. We have already discussed banking. 50 crore people have been banked. We know about the Ujjwala scheme. About 10 crore people have been given Ujjwala cooking gas connections. Most important, during the COVID pandemic, over 2 billion people were given vaccines using a DPI infrastructure, which is why you were able to get the vaccine, one nation, one vaccine, which means I could take the vaccine in Delhi and get the booster dose in Chennai or Mumbai or wherever I was. I did not come back to the same place, which is what enabled seamless rollout of it. You're seeing the one nation, one ration card. So whichever way you look at, there are gazillion examples now to show that you can achieve public good at scale. So the tipping point has been crossed, and now it is being accepted as a global standard. So in fact, it adds to India's soft power in many, many ways.
Mr. Basu, you did mention the G20, and how well placed is India to take advantage of the ongoing shift, let's say, in global economic dynamics or geoeconomics. How much should India be focusing, let's say, on taking this digital public infrastructure to the global south? You already said that it's there, but I mean, is that really taking our soft power to the next level?
Absolutely, we have to take our soft power to the next level. It's a unique kind of soft power, I recently saw a video of Chinese students, by the way, dancing to this Kala Chashma song. So, our soft power includes not just digital public infrastructure, but also the sort of cultural soft power that we have, and so this aspect is vitally important. We need to, of course, provide that public good to the world and generate enormous goodwill from it. In addition, I think it's also, I think the challenges are worth noting as well. We are, for instance, the second largest producer of steel, aluminium, cement in the world, but we produce only about 1/8 or 1/7 of what China does of all three of those things. So, the world has allowed China to become a behemoth in manufacturing, partly through its own highly subsidized system that should not have been allowed to operate in the global trading system. But anyway, that is the reality. There are things like semiconductors and the broader electronic sector where India is just taking its first footsteps on that path to creating those industries. So while we should celebrate our remarkable positioning in digital public infrastructure and in financial inclusion and all the benefits that will accrue to our people as a result of that, and perhaps to the world as well, we should not be should remain cognizant also of the fact that there's much to be done in the area of manufacturing, for instance, where we are well behind China, and that is something that our digital infrastructure can certainly help, but there are lots of other advantages that we have, including a much lower costs, much lower potential costs of manufacturing. But we need to take full advantage of those, induce more capital inflow, induce our own businessmen to invest in some of those areas. So the fact that we recently saw news about Tata creating a semiconductor facility, a major semiconductor facility, I mean, those are positive signs.
Yes.
But those are still very initial steps. There's a long way to go in order to succeed as a manufacturing power, which clearly is something that Prime Minister Modi has been emphasizing since his first Independence Day speech, and it remains a challenge, not just for us, but for around the world. It remains a challenge for any country to become a significant manufacturer in an era in which China has almost monopolized a large chunk of manufacturing.
And definitely the digital economy is going to help us with that. But Mr. Padmanabhan, a final word from you. Spence speaks of increased complexity in global governance. But he also says that India's leap in technology will be a key catalyst. So how effective is digital governance in let's say, meeting the objectives of good governance? We're seeing this, we're talking really about good governance in a sense over the last half hour. And Spence won the Nobel Prize along with two others for something called asymmetric markets, where the information is, everyone doesn't have equal information in the market. Some people have superior knowledge, some people have less knowledge, and as a result of that, the ones with superior knowledge gain, but the other ones try to rise up to the level of the ones with superior knowledge. So it looks like India has superior knowledge here. At what level do you think the rest of the world is going to acknowledge that?
See, Mark, I'll give you a series of examples which will explain this, why we are all believe that this is DPIs are good for good governance. Till Aadhaar came about, identity was a challenge to most Indians, including even elites like you and me. Today, thanks to Aadhaar, the identity problem has been resolved. And that is the first step towards becoming an economic agent. Thereafter, Aadhaar was combined with other elements to create the so-called India stack, which you mentioned earlier, which is what the whole idea of eKYC. Otherwise, to know your customer was such a challenge. But during the COVID phase, the Reserve Bank of India made special exemption and enabled eKYC. I was just looking at the data on the Aadhaar website. So far, 18.3 billion eKYCs have been done in this country so far. And it's a dashboard which they update. So we mentioned earlier about Ujjwala. We have mentioned a direct benefit transfer, which is a classic case of good governance, where you have weeded out corruption, you have weeded out ghost accounts. Most importantly, because you created an economic GPS through the JAM, which is what you mentioned, Jan Dhan, Aadhaar, Mobile, you're able to direct welfare to the person for whom it was intended. You remember previously this famous remark that every 1 rupee you spend, 15 paisa reaches. To pull all this together, there are enough examples to show that DPI is good for good governance.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Mr. Anil Padmanabhan and Mr. Prasanjit Basu. Thank you for enlightening us on this interesting subject. In conclusion, the success of the UPI, it shows that the fintech revolution is happening faster than people had expected, and that's the speed of digital. It's speeding up networks, and banks are the first to adapt. People are also adapting, and as they adapt faster, they become more familiar with the technology-driven interventions. Phones are already working through face recognition, allowing access to personal files. So AI is also allowing customers to be better informed in these asymmetric markets. So India is moving fast on this highway to growth. Thanks very much for watching. Namaskar.